Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene. Today's date, July 19, 2025. Time in Texas, about 2 p.m. Thanks for like, subscribe, and share. Some of the things we'll cover are what's happening now in Texas and the effect of that recent tropical system along the Texas coast, plus other topics. This morning I woke up with Santorini on my mind, associated with the word volcano. So I'll give you an update on that also. So we'd like to say rest in peace for 3 Los Angeles sheriff deputies who were killed at a Los Angeles training center. That happened July 18, about 7:30 in the morning. There was a bomb in the parking lot. People were just getting to work and it exploded. And so 3 Los Angeles sheriff deputies passed away from that incident. I see they're having a good memorial funeral for all 3, involving many of the law enforcement levels of Los Angeles today. And in the Texas flash floods that happened July 4 in central Texas, we now have a death count of 146 and 100 missing. And we also say, rest in peace. And we have this. So some of the other things I'll cover today. Israel is downing American citizens. The Obama coup, Russia headed for gold and oil, and the U.S. money and guns to Ukraine. So that's going on. So we'll begin by talking about some things going on in the U.S. and the tropics. And so we have Yellowstone. Many people have been saying that animals were migrating from Yellowstone. Well, I checked into that. That was as part of an area I've studied before about animal migration with regard to seismic events like earthquakes or volcanoes. In the New Madrid seismic zone, when it had 3 earthquakes in a 3-month period, about in 1811, 1812, that was like December, January, and February. So we have documented anecdotal information. In other words, people keeping journals and noticing and making reports, anecdote, of animals migrating from this area before the 3 significant earthquakes occurred, up to 1 year before they happened in this area. Even squirrels and deer swimming across rivers to get out of the area, along with other animals. Well, so I looked into this. Animals are migrating from Yellowstone, which would be a key indicator of increased seismic events taking place. I didn't find any information on it. Now, Mary Greeley, who specializes in Yellowstone, earthquakes, seismic events, and so on, says this is not true. And I looked at the footage that was being put forth, and it looked like the same footage I've seen before, where animals do move from one part of Yellowstone to another on an annual basis. So there's no truth to animals leaving Yellowstone. So that's going on. Now, in the tropics, we don't have much going on. We had that disturbed area that moved inland like Thursday and Friday on the U.S. So Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas all received, I think, up to about 6 inches of rain from that. The National Hurricane Center is now only putting a disturbed area way out into the Atlantic. And today is like 0% chance for development, 48 hours, 10 to 20 about in the next 7 days. But according to the National Hurricane Center, this will move further into the Atlantic. It's not even close to the U.S. and will dissipate. So that's not a worry. Praise the Lord for that. We have this from JWTV and Discoverable that along the Costco's plate, we had recently a 5.1. Costco's is a plate to watch for events impacting the San Andreas Fault Line in California. But this is coming out from JWTV that when we had the 7.3 in Alaska a couple of days ago, that there was in South Carolina also a 2.4. And he's putting forth that Lockheed Martin is also going to begin sea mining off the U.S. West Coast in the Pacific Ocean. So what is up with that? And that NIST, a government agency, has been holding exercises and also simulated. It had a small 10-story building, and it simulated what would be the effect on this building, a high rise of a 6.9. So that's going on. I like to see government agencies engaged in, simulations, exercises for possible seismic events in the U.S. And we have this. So what's going on with Santorini? When I woke up this morning, that was on my mind. Santorini. I believe God gives us messages. So Santorini. So we have Israel. We have Lebanon. We have the Greek island Santorini. And many tens of thousands of people evacuated like last year. Santorini continues. Magma is rising in this area. And I had that message from God in the fall of 2020. Inside the earth, magma is rising in all directions. Earthquake swarms do continue there and have been ongoing since February. And the latest is that they are pretty shallow, 5 to 20 kilometers, or about 3 to 12 miles. Now, this 12-mile depth is what the USGS finally settled on for the depth of that recent 7.3 in Alaska. So that's going on, but they're still having swarm earthquakes. And magma is rising in the volcano. It's occurring in this area of the island. So that's going on. Hundreds of earthquakes have occurred since February. Now with Daily Mail, putting out this information. Yes, we do have this going on off of the west coast of, we have Washington State, Oregon, California. So off of Oregon, we have the axial seamount. I looked into this. This is probable, may erupt. It's underwater. It's 300 miles from Oregon, and it's 1 mile underwater. but it continues to have 100 to 300 earthquakes per day. This has been ongoing for months, and they're magnitude 1 to 2. And magma is also rising in this area. This has been documented. So we have William Wilcox, a professor of oceanography from the University of Washington, who's saying, you know, keep your eyes on this area. Something could happen. Now we have from Brett Weinstein talking about the U.S. Real ID. Now I learned something there. I think about 30 states have put in Real ID. And it's logical that this was only a starting point for American citizens as far as I'm concerned. So we have 30 states who have issued them. I've had mine for years in Texas. Your driver's license has a gold star on it. They also do biometrics. You have to give your thumbprint to get your driver's license. And this source puts out that most states put a gold star on their driver's license except for one state, and that is Washington State, who put a flag on their driver's license. But it's still considered a real ID. I think it was May of this year, you had to have a real ID driver's license or a passport to get on planes inside the U.S. However, more information is coming out that there was a recent meeting of the administrators of driver's license. There was a national meeting of the state administrators of driver's license, and the plan is to digitize your driver's license, put it on the internet, and to tie to it your medical records, your military records, any record, criminal records, any records you have, your, I guess that would be your school and college records. Everything is going to be, and facial ID, and it would make it easier then for the U.S. government to bring in a social credit scoring system. So that's going on. And we know that RFK Jr., the head of Health and Human Health Services Agency, made a recent statement that in the next 4 years, he wanted all American citizens to be wearing wearables, which is a wristband on your wrist that carries your medical information and monitors your health. Well, I got this to say to RFK. Kiss my grits. I ain't wearing that. Not at all. And, you know, if you were a real conspiracy person, you might think, well, they put it on, they tie it up to my BIOS, and it'd be easy to shoot some kind of frequency in there, wouldn't it? Mind control. So we have this going on. Now, President Trump is releasing, is having Pam Bondi with the DOJ. So the DOJ is to release Epstein grand jury transcripts, you know, that took place during Epstein's trial, I would guess. Now, plus, so that's going on. President Trump is trying to cozy up again, once again, to his MAGA base. So that's going on. He's doing that. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, President Trump's Director of National Intelligence, is putting forth factual information. This is something I have researched in the past, that Obama the Dems, yes, they tried to bring about a coup versus President Trump in his first term. Yes, this is true. But the information now is being declassified and shared with American citizens. And it's being put forth that Obama and the Dems directed to manipulate the intel agencies, the NSA, FBI, CIA, to put forth false information about Russiagate in 2016. Friday, those documents are being declassified. And this is the same group who said in 2016 there was no evidence for voter fraud. Well, there was massive voter fraud also in 2016, but what happened was so many people came out to vote for President Trump that it overwhelmed the Dems' secret software incursions, and they didn't have enough time to put forth enough false votes. That's why in 2020, with the COVID, voter mail-in ballots were put in place by the Dems so that they could once again steal the vote in 2020, which is what they did. And so that's going on. So all these documents are being put out and incriminates former President Obama actively engaged in a coup against President Trump, along with the heads of the CIA, Brennan, the NSA, the FBI, McCabe, DNI, Clapper, Attorney General Loretta Lynch. So that's going on. And this was also funded and directed by the deep state outside of the U.S., which is why President Trump is going after certain nations now. So a new report is going to be released about Obama and his cabinet actively engaged in Russiagate on January 6, 2017, which would have been just before President Trump was inaugurated, and used the fake, and it was well known by the American people also that the Steele dossier was fake. It was paid for and directed by HRC and paid for by the Dems. So that's going on. So Gabbard has sent the declassified docs to the DOJ for prosecution, and the charge for Obama and certain members of his cabinet, treason and conspiracy to bring about a coup in the United States of America. Now, that was in 2017. In 2020, we saw the actual coup. That had to do with voter fraud. Stephen Gardner puts this forth. President Trump, has directed his AG, Pam Bondi, to release the grand jury transcripts for Epstein. And we see also another fallout of the change in America. We see Stephen Colbert, a longtime mainstream media late-night host, his show going away. We saw recently the Wall Street Journal printing a fake letter supposedly written to Jeffrey Epstein years ago by President Trump with a drawing of a nude woman. Now, prior to the mainstream media putting Wall Street Journal putting this out, President Trump had a conversation with the owner of the publishing company of the Wall Street Journal, Robert Murdoch, and said it is fake. The Wall Street Journal went ahead and published it and stated emphatically it is true. Now President Trump immediately launched a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against Murdoch for defamation of character. The birthday card supposedly he sent to Epstein is fake. And we have this going on from Dialogue Works, who recently interviewed Colonel Larry Wilkerson and former Ambassador Charles Freeman. This is what's going on we see in some areas of the world. So we have Israel, we have Syria. Now, I've put forth that the CIA backed a former terrorist who killed a U.S. military in Iraq, al-Jawlani. He changed his name when he became the CIA puppet to head up the Syrian government to al-Shura. Still his new terrorist name. Well, it's coming out that this group had been hitting Christians, the Druze, plus any minority groups, even Muslim groups who have a different perspective on their Muslim religion. The terrorist group government of Syria is hitting. So now we see this Syrian cultural group, the Druze, are also being hit by the Bedouins, who are basically a desert tribal people. I do not know the reason the Bedouins would be hitting the Druze. But we have this. The Druze leaders then appealed to Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. If you will help us, and many of them are located in the West Bank area. So we have the West Bank, that technically, legally, is still part of Syria. And the Druze, maybe up to 1 million live here. So they appealed to Benjamin Netanyahu, help us against the Bedouins, and we will vote for you if we're able to vote in your elections. The plan, we understand, is for Israel to annex the West Bank. So Israel is now hitting Damascus, versus the Syrian government. And it's being put forth that Israel attempted an assassination of Syrian leader al-Jawlani, his current terrorist name al-Shura. And I put out in my last video intel by Hal Turner that al-Shura or al-Jawlani and his family had evac. And now it's coming out, I think that was Colonel Larry Wilkerson, who has sources who provided videotapes of 2 members of the cassette, that's the Israeli government, saying that their plans, Israel is engaged in land grab. We know they also want Gaza. So the land grab, according to these taped statements by members of the Israeli government cassette, includes they want to take Syria and also Jordan and also Egypt. Colonel Wilkerson describes them as individuals who are not in touch with the real world. So that's going on. And from that same interview, we have former Ambassador Charles Freeman wondering what it is the U.S. government is doing about Israeli settlers inside Israel killing American citizens. Yeah, I would want to know about that too. What's going on, President Trump? And that comes on the heels of President Trump's ambassador, Mike Huckabee, stating in a letter and now becoming public that Israel does not welcome Christians, holds up on their visas, and even launches criminal investigations into well-established American Christian groups, and that Israel does not appreciate the massive donations made by American Christians to Israel, and so on. So we see Israel on the hot seat. So that's going on. And we had this breaking news Friday night, trying to sneak a vote by the American people. The U.S. Congress, the House, voted for more money to Ukraine. And we know the U.S. had said more weapons can go to Ukraine, supposedly to be purchased by NATO. But now this is direct aid, American citizen money, once again flowing out of the U.S. for the purposes of war and going to a foreign nation. The American people do not want money and guns going out of the U.S. to foreign nations and not for war. So that's going on. And we have from DURAN what's going on in Ukraine. We see that the CIA puppet Zelensky. So we've got Russia. We've got Belarus. Ukraine. The capital, Kiev. That's where the government is seated. So this is coming out. The CIA now wants to replace Zelensky. So Zelensky out, and they want to put in Zaluzhny. Now he had formerly been the head of the military in Ukraine, and for the past year or so has been the Ukraine ambassador to the UK. And we have the guy who's really running the Kiev government, Yermak, and also a CIA operative, reshuffling the cabinet, and they put in a new prime minister, different positions they've transferred. Now it's coming out, Germany is sending Taurus missiles to Ukraine. The U.S. is sending JASSMs. The U.S. pulled back from sending Tomahawks, which are nuclear capable, which would mean if Russia saw Tomahawks coming from Ukraine into Russia, they wouldn't know if they were nuke armed or not. So that's going on. And we have this. So now we have Russia hitting inside Ukraine, and they've hit certain locations which was designed to take down Azerbaijan oil supplies to Ukraine. And it's coming out, Azerbaijan. So we have Israel, we have Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan allowed Israeli planes to use Azerbaijan airspace to hit Iran during that past dust up between Israel and Iran. And we know Russia supports Iran. Russia hits Azerbaijan refineries and facilities inside Ukraine that specifically use Azerbaijan oil and are operated by an Azerbaijan company, SOCAR. And they hit Kremenchuk refinery, Dohobych oil plant, and a processing and distribution facility in Odessa. So that's going on. Now we have this. Russia is going to set up their own gold trading platform. Now we see, and I believe what's going on is that President Putin, President Trump plus President Putin versus the deep state, the Rothschild-controlled central banks. So we saw President Trump right now opposing the Federal Reserve, which is the deep state money control inside the U.S., one of them. And now Russia is going to set up its own gold trading platform, independent of the City of London and the U.S., which are controlled by the Rothschilds. And it will, one of the things that this move by Russia will expose is in the U.S. and globally, the fallacy of paper gold. That means that people call up a gold trader and they want to buy gold, but they don't want to store the gold, so they receive paper. Well, actually, it's come out and it's been well known for years. The gold trader is reselling the same gold and just giving out paper. And this will pit Russia directly against the City of London. That's the deep state and global financial control seat, the City of London. So that's going on. And we have this. The President of Colombia says that the NATO is made up of armies of darkness and evil. Colombia is the only South American nation that's a NATO ally. So the President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, said at a recent emergency meeting in Bogota regarding Gaza that Colombia will pull out of NATO. So that's going on. From Prepper News, formerly Canadian Prepper, puts this forth. NATO wants war within weeks. Now, this is the end of, we know President Trump gave a 50-day ultimatum to Russia. This ends September 2nd. So, Canadian Prepper News puts forth that it's likely something's going to happen then. And that currently Russia is prepping. So Russia right now is prepping for an offensive into Ukraine with 160,000 new fresh troops. And we have the UK and Germany now making a new nuke pact that's just between the UK and Germany, and it's outside NATO, regarding the use of nukes by the UK and Germany. Seymour Hersh, a well-known journalist, says that Zelensky will be replaced, and in his place will come Zaluzhny. So that's going on. And we have this from Dr. William Mount. Yeah, President Trump sues the Wall Street Journal for their saying he sent a body birthday card to Epstein years ago. Now we have from Deep Dive that Russia is now taking territory inside Ukraine. We have Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson. I believe that Russia will also take Odessa. I put out in a recent video, we have Kaliningrad. That's between Lithuania and Poland. And that NATO is making plans to hit Kaliningrad. So President Trump, it's good to get the U.S. out of NATO as soon as possible. Deep Dive says that Russia is taking land now inside Ukraine faster than it has done in the previous 2 years. In other words, it's not meeting much resistance. I understand inside Ukraine we have two significant resistance groups. One is pro-Russian and the other one is anti-Ukraine Zelensky. And that these two groups now are uniting and are helping Russia take Ukraine. And we have that Serbia, who had been a supplier, a major supplier of ammo to Ukraine, is halting or slowing its shipments to Ukraine. I believe there's coordinated events going on. From BORZILLMAN, Russia to Ukraine to the UK and Germany. Russia will hit the UK and Germany if they're giving nuclear capable or other certain types of missiles to Ukraine that Ukraine can use to make long, deep strikes inside Russia. So Russia to Ukraine in the last 72 hours, they have taken 4 settlements. So that's going on. All right. And Russia is also making statements that if certain weapons are given and put forth and NATO brings in their troops to launch these long-range missiles to inside Russia, that Russia will make direct hits on London, Paris, Berlin. So that's going on. It's good to be in prayer for America, President Trump, the U.S. military, and world peace. I love you, and I'll see you soon.